So I've been thinking about lawns and looking at lawns. In fact, I once got in an accident because I was looking at a lawn instead of the road. So about 45 years now of focusing on lawns. So we're here in early March and everything's about to happen in the world of gardening and landscaping. And all of that we'll cover. So subscribe to our channel and keep up with it all, and I'll try to inform you of all the interesting things that happen as spring develops. There's no better way to keep your lawn looking great and healthy and full of vitality than overseeding, and yet it's something that most people don't even know about. So overseeding lawns is generally thought of as something you do when you have a warm season grass that turns brown in the winter and you want to keep it green. So in much of the country, that's how overseeding is understood. No matter what kind of lawn you have, I think overseeding should be a part of keeping it healthy and making it look its best. But that idea of overseeding for general health then can be done, as we explained in that video, in the fall or the spring. And it's done to pretty much refresh your lawn and make it look vital and make it look new. So you essentially mow down usually as low as you can get your existing lawn and try to get close to some kind of soil contact and then overseed it. So this is an additional way to use overseeding, not just over warm season grass, but over any kind of grass, whether you have bluegrass or fescue. No matter what kind of lawn you have, I think overseeding probably at least once a year or once every other year is important, especially if you're one that likes your lawn to look as good as possible. Then the other thing we're going to do in addition to spreading the seed is we're going to put some really good quality organic amendments over the top of the seed, and our blend and our penetrate both impact the rate of germination. It'll make it germinate faster, and it will make more of the seeds, so a higher percentage of seeds germinate. So look back at our last video where we talked about overseeding lawns in the spring, and you can contrast it with this. Now we've seeded this for 3 weeks now. It's 3 weeks since we overseeded it. And you'll see that the areas that look the best, where the lawn seed germinated the best, is where we used a top dressing mulch. I used Amend. Now this seed is going to germinate one way or another. I like to tell a story about how one year I was driving around in my pickup and I looked over at the floorboard where I had some perennial rye seed that had fallen out of the bag, and it was germinating in my pickup. So if I know I can germinate seed on the floorboard of my pickup, I know I can germinate it, and you can germinate it in your lawn where you've got everything else much better conditions than inside a pickup. It's a chilly day here in Fresno in mid-December. An excellent day to show you how to encourage health and growth on trees by pruning them when they're dormant, right up until early spring. I'm John Valentino, president of John and Bob's. I'm a landscape architect and a landscape contractor. I'm here with Chip Valentino, who's also a landscape contractor. He helps on all our projects. So the timing today is good if you have a Japanese maple that you want to grow more. And you'll see this small one that we have in a 24-inch box. We want it to grow more. So we will prune it now in mid-December when it's dormant or just beginning to be dormant. We haven't had a lot of cold weather, so it's just entering its dormancy. If it was a big Japanese maple that we're always trying to control the growth, I would wait and prune it in the spring after it puts on all its leaves, because those leaves conduct photosynthesis and allow that tree to get even bigger. So we would trick it by, as soon as it puts on all its new growth, we cut all that new growth off, and that's an excellent way to control size on any tree or any plant. Spring is a magical time in gardening because it's the time where everything blooms. And that's really one of the main attractions of gardening is beautiful flowering plants. If you're feeding it with the soil and try to make that soil as healthy as possible and rely on the soil to do everything for the plant, you'll see a big difference in bloom. And the owner is reporting to me right now the bloom is just more spectacular this spring than ever before. It's not exactly a double-blind study, but in her anecdotal description, she's saying the bloom looks about double what normally a lot of these plants don't usually bloom like this. So sometimes when I describe to my clients exactly how this soil-based gardening impacts pest and disease reduction, I'm looking at them and I can kind of see the eyes roll back in their head, which means they're about to be very bored with what I'm telling them. So I'm going to try to just go through it quickly. If you'd like to know more about it, you can contact us or you can look it up. There's lots of interesting information of this type online. So I don't think it's a new concept, but one many gardeners have gotten away from feeding the soil. And you can feed the soil with compost or earthworm castings. We make a special line of products specifically for feeding the soil, as opposed to feeding plants directly where you ignore the soil and allow plants to just take the nutrients from chemical additions. And when you do that, that doesn't build the soil, and if you're not building the soil, it's not able to provide every protection that soil should provide to plants, which involves keeping them healthy and making them produce flowers and fruits and vegetables at their maximum. A key here, as we covered in the other videos, if you look back, is it looked like a lot of bark with very little plants when we finished this, and now we're starting to get some growth. And everything in general looking good. As the weather warms though, you do need to be careful about the best way to water them. We water differently the first spring because normally you're probably aware you want to water deeply and infrequently as possible. But when you've just planted plants, you want to water a lot more often and not that deeply because you're trying to keep those roots on the top moist because those are the only roots there are. And then transition into a watering where you encourage the roots to go down and you increase the intervals between watering and then increase the amount of time when it does water. But right now, we're still in a period where we're trying to keep that top moist and encouraging them to root out. So then our fourth point applies to everybody, regardless of where you are. The most beneficial, cost-effective, efficient, value-laden approach to changing your soil, improving your soil, feeding all your plants is a generous application of our products or somebody else's products in the early spring. And early will vary depending on where you live. Early in our area is February 15th, which is actually still winter, but we can start, the soil temperatures start rising, things start waking up, and we actually get maybe the very first things blooming like forsythia about then. And then in other parts of the country, early spring is much later. But it's a go in spring, and if you're only going to apply once a year, I would apply in spring. That's where you're going to get the most for your money and the most value. You can find links to the products mentioned in the description below. You can also get our guide to soil-based gardening in the description below, and it'll tell you everything about our whole system of improving your soil, which we believe is the key to successful gardening.